Hi YouTube, Darth here. Yesterday, DICE announced the second round of the Battlefield 5 Alpha, and it's sooner than you might think. Even though Gamescom is still 2 weeks away, the second Battlefield 5 Alpha is set to start next Tuesday, August 14th. Preload starts on the 13th, so if you're on PC and in the Alpha, make sure to set yourself up for the download. If you're not on PC, unfortunately you're going to be out of luck, as once again the Alpha is just on PC. Now, if you've not yet received an Alpha invite, supposedly the next wave of invites are going out to veteran Battlefield players of Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4. No word on if that extends to anybody else or hardline players. So if you're a veteran of those games, keep your eyes peeled on your email inbox and also make sure that you're signed up for promotional emails from EA. You might just get into the next wave. Once again, sorry console players. It looks like you're out of luck until the open beta in September. With that out of the way, let's talk about those changes. First up, there's going to be no new content or features in the second Battlefield 5 Alpha. This is purely meant to be a stress test and an evaluation of new time to kill and balance changes, which I will go over a little bit later in this video. I do have to say that I'm pretty disappointed that we're not going to be seeing anything new in this second round. I had a lot of hopes that some of this customization DICE has talked about would be making it into the build, but alas no, this Alpha is built from the same one as the previous. So no new toys, maps, or customization to play around with here. What I am hoping for is that DICE will make up for that in the following week at Gamescom by giving us a face-meltingly good gameplay trailer and a big update on the game. Because so far, we've gotten nothing beyond what's in the alpha, and that's a far cry from what was talked up at EA Play. Looking at DICE's track record over the last 3 titles, I really have to wonder just how much of what was talked about is going to make it into the final game. Hopefully in 2 weeks I'm eating crow for being skeptical, but I can't say I'm filled with optimism right now. Which is a weird thing to say about a game that I'm otherwise excited about. I genuinely enjoyed my time in the first alpha. I pre-ordered the game a long time ago, though not based on my time in the alpha. I think it was much earlier that I actually did that. I pretty much figured that if I bought and played Battlefront 2, that I was at least going to first 30 days this game too, regardless of how it turned out. So please blow the skeptical me away at Gamescom, DICE. As for the balance changes, DICE did go into a good bit of detail, and the short of it is that the time to kill in Battlefield 5 is getting longer. At least for the next phase of the alpha. Keep in mind that this is all experimental at this point, and while on paper I'm not too excited about these changes, I'm interested in seeing how this plays out before I judge it fully. Let's go over the exact changes now because they touch on just about every weapon that was in the alpha. First up, the EMP machine pistol had its max damage brought in from 12 to 8 meters, its max fall-off range moved from 50 to 40 meters, and its min damage increased to 14.3. So the damage on the EMP in Battlefield's effective ranges has taken a hit, and it's certainly now less effective at mid-range. Next, the MP40 took the same exact hit. Its range damage was brought in to 8 meters, its max fall-off is 40 meters, and min damage is buffed to 14.3. These are probably one of the more gentle time to kill nerfs. According to the devs, this was done to make SMGs more effective in close range than long range. Additionally, both weapons received an extra magazine at spawn and can still get an additional one when resupplying. So rather than starting with 2, they now have 3 and can go up to 4. Which seems like a big retreat from ammo scarcity, which I don't really think was necessary based on my experience in the alpha. I always felt like I had enough ammo if I visited an ammo station with relative frequency. Next up is the big hit, which is the STG-44. Like the other automatics, it too received an additional magazine. But it had its maximum damage taken from 27 all the way down to 20, meaning it's now a 5 bullets to kill minimum instead of 4. Additionally, its fall-off range starts at 20 meters instead of 11 and doesn't fall off completely until 60 meters instead of 50. The minimum damage has gone from 17 to 16.7. So it doesn't fall off quite as much as it used to between maximum and minimum, and the weapon has been brutalized in the close range and received somewhat of a buff in the medium range. Keep in mind that like Battlefield 1, all these damage fall-offs are not linear, so it could very well be a 5-bullet kill out to 35 meters or beyond, much like Battlefield 4 assault rifles. Assuming its rate of fire is still 599 rounds per minute, this means that the weapon's time to kill is closer to Battlefield 1 time to kill than Battlefield 4. For example, at around 400 milliseconds minimum, it's not unlike the slower automatics of Battlefield 1. If this is indicative of an overall intention of the game, I've got some pretty big concerns. That's basically a 33% increase in time to kill versus its previous, and it seems to indicate that DICE is not interested in faster time to kill in Battlefield 5. But again, maybe this is all an experiment to see what people want. It cannot be said that they aren't listening to people because they mentioned this as a direct feedback from the Battlefield 5 first round alpha in their follow-up a few weeks back. So if you're in the alpha, definitely play it and give feedback. If it feels worse, be sure to let them know. I definitely at least intend to try it and see how it feels. My initial slant is negative because I thought it was fine before and actually fun, so this is a strange development to me. The list goes on as the Bren LMG was next on the hit list. It had its maximum damage pushed out from 11 meters to 20 and its fall-off range from 50 to 60 meters. Its minimum damage was also slightly decreased from 17 to 16.7 damage, so really only a tiny tweak and it was made better in the mid-range. The MG34 had similar changes to its optimal ranges, moving out from 11 meters to 20 for the start of fall-off and a move of its maximum fall-off from 50 to 60 meters. On the flip side, it received a buff to its minimum damage from a minimum of 17 to a new minimum of 20. So 6 bullets to kill down to just 5. I think given that the MG34 is really only any good when it's set up, this move is okay. If we had hipfire LMGs like earlier Battlefield titles, this would likely be a problem, but in this case it simply means that this weapon is going to be the bipod hero's weapon of choice in the next alpha stage. Now onto the rifles, which were not spared from this experiment. Overall, the Gewehr 43 has been stretched out in its effective ranges. Its fall-off now starts at 15 meters instead of 26.5, so that's a pretty big shift to take this weapon's effective range in, and its maximum range has been extended from 51.5 meters to 60 meters. Combined with a minimum damage nerf from 36 to 34, the Gewehr 43 still has a 3-bullet max kill, though its performance against limbs may now be a bit more obvious at range. I'm not exactly sure of the limb damage multipliers in Battlefield 5 yet, so we'll have to see. Next up is the Kar 98, which was similarly stretched. The fall-off start is now just 8 meters down from 20. The fall-off end has been pushed out from 80 meters to 90 meters. To compensate for this, its max damage is now 90, up from 80, but its min damage has decreased from 60 to 55. Now the interesting switch here is that it's also had its bullet velocity reduced from 700 meters per second to just 600, which also increases its bullet drop. So snipers will now have to compensate even more for targets on the move and at range. I'm okay with this, though I did enjoy the previous model in the first alpha. I'll have to give this a shot and see if I'm back to hating all day every day on Battlefield bolts. I hope not, as I was getting enjoyment out of the original alpha. Finally, the only pistol in the alpha, the Walther P38, got a bit of a boost. Its spare magazines double from 4 to 8 with a maximum of 10 when resupplying. Seriously, who's using their pistol that much? That seems nuts. The fall-off of the weapon's damage now starts at 15 meters as opposed to 10, but its max range has decreased from 70 meters to 30. So the band has narrowed somewhat, and the fall-off is likely steeper once the weapon enters mid-range. The minimum damage has climbed from 15 to 16.7, and the maximum damage has, I think, decreased from 30 to 25. I'm not exactly sure, as DICE has a pretty obvious typo here in their forum post. So those are the changes that have been shared from the upcoming alpha. At face value, I'm not happy about the increased ammo and alterations specifically to the SD44's time to kill. But if I think about this as a big experiment, it makes sense. In game design, you don't want to make tiny changes because if you do, you might not see any results from your changes. A lot of people complained specifically about the STG-44 in the previous alpha, so they made a change to it, a big change. If people complain harshly about their change, well, obviously there was an effect. If people say it's great, mission accomplished then, I guess. It's important to remember that nothing is final. This is an alpha for a reason, and it's important to test and give feedback. A lot of the wilder changes in the Battlefield CTE never made it onto the live product because the developers had a good feedback chain with the players there. I'm going to look at this the same way. Even if I'm not super excited about some of these changes, we try them out, we give feedback, and we move along. I think though, if I had to be surprised by any of the balance changes, it's that the vehicles were completely left out of this. Maybe that's an accidental omission, but we're certainly going to find out day one if vehicles were touched or not. It certainly won't take long to figure out if airplanes were changed, as if they are still hot garbage, then we'll know pretty fast. As for tanks, that will be a little bit harder to discover. Though, again, I'm kind of surprised that no changes were made to the volume of rockets that players get, as that seems to be the tank's #1 problem right now. But this does seem like an infantry-focused test, so not touching those things and leaving them relatively lackluster might be a smart move. Remember how I talked last week how Battlefield players really mark infantry combat as of prime importance? Well, it seems that DICE is of the same mindset, so they're looking to get that tuned and good first. Like I mentioned in that video, I certainly hope that they don't forget that vehicle combat is also very important. But we shall see when the second stage alpha arrives next Tuesday. That's it for this video on the Battlefield 5 Alpha update. If there's anything you want me to look at particularly closely next week for the Alpha, let me know in the comments below. My time with the Alpha is going to have to be cut a little short as I'm out of town next weekend for a friend's wedding. But I will try to get as much as I can in the time that DICE allows. If you like this video, please be sure to force choke that like button. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.